guitar. Today we are going to be talking about the chromatic scale and how that relates to learning bar chords and using a capo. So basically, in a nutshell, the chromatic scale is every note in a row. So if you were like in front of a piano and you hit a C and then played every white and every black key in a row until you got to the next C, that would be the chromatic scale. Now, it's not really something you would solo over. There's no key to a chromatic scale. It's every note. Though you can use pieces of it, like if you want to do a cool like solo thing. Yeah, that's a cool thing to do, and you should do it. But the purpose of this is it's more of a beginner lesson to understand the names of the notes, mostly on your low E, A, and D strings, and how you can make major and minor bar chords out of them, and also transpose songs using a capo. So let's get started on that. Okay, so let's start with my low E string. And it would make sense that if this is my E string, when tuned to standard tuning, this is an E note. So if I hold down my first fret, that would be an F. My next note would be an F sharp or a G flat. They're the same thing. My next note would be a G. My next note would be a G sharp or an A flat. My next note would be an A. My next note would be an A sharp or a B flat. My next note would be a B. And then my next note would be a C. There's no B sharp, unless you're in The Simpsons. And if you get that joke, power to you. My next note would be a C sharp or a D flat. My next note would be a D. My next note would be a D sharp or an E flat. And then if I go up to the 12th fret, I'm back to an E. So the guitar repeats itself once you get to the 12th fret. And so you'll notice there's no B sharp and there's also no E sharp. I went straight from E to F. Now you can do the same thing on any string. So your next string would be an A. And I'm not going to bore you with going up and all the way up the A string again, but it would be the same thing. You would just start with your A note. And when you get to your next string, your D string, you would do the same. And those are the three strings we're going to focus on for using bar chords and for using a capo. So let's get started with bar chords. So the big thing with bar chords is we're going to focus on 4 chords. We're going to focus on an E, an E minor, an A, and an A minor. So using those 4 chord shapes, we can accomplish a lot of bar chords. Now there's many, many more bar chords and many more chords that you can use, but these are the very basics, and you can go a long way with these 4 shapes. Okay, so let's start with the E chord shape. So I have my standard E chord shape, and we just discussed that this is my E string, so this would be my root note. So the root note is the same as the name of the chord. So I have an E chord, my root note is an E. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, instead of using my first 3 fingers, my pointer and my ring and my middle to play the E chord, I'm going to use my middle, my ring, and my pinky to play it. No difference, of course. But now I'm going to slide it up 1 fret, the whole shape, and I'm going to bar my first finger across the whole guitar. So it would make sense if this is an E chord and this is an E note, if I go up 1 fret, this note becomes an F. That makes this an F chord. And same as with the notes on your E string, the chords are the same. So I have an F, F sharp, G, so on and so forth, same as the string. Now, what I would do if this is an E and this is an E minor, same concept would apply to the bar chords. This is an F. I pick up my finger that's on the G string. That that becomes an F minor, F sharp minor, G minor, G sharp minor, A flat minor, same thing, so on and so forth. So those are the bar chords based on an E chord and an E minor chord. And obviously you could play any major or minor chord just with those two shapes. However, if you only know your E and E minor shapes, you're going to find yourself, if you're playing songs with bar chords, flying all the way up and down the guitar, and sometimes that's pretty cool, but sometimes it might not be what you want to be accomplishing. So the other two chords we want to focus on, the chord shapes, are my A and my A minor shape. Now these are a little trickier than the E shaped and E minor shaped bar chords because for the A chord I have to do 2 bars, which is kind of hard. And for these chords, I'm not playing all 6 strings, so I have to be a little more careful with my picking hand. So this is the challenge for these kind of shapes, but you know, keep at it and you'll get it. So I'm going to start with my A major chord. So here's my basic A major chord with 3 fingers. What I'm going to do, and you probably may do this already, I'm going to use 1 finger to play all 3 of those notes. But now I'm going to switch it to my ring finger. Still no difference, an A chord is an A chord no matter what fingers you use. So now if I slide it up and I bar, I have an A sharp or a B flat chord. Most people say B flat, you don't really hear people say A sharp all that much. The hard part here is I'm only playing my inside 4 strings. So I'm not playing my low E. In fact, I'm trying to deaden it a little bit with my pointer finger. You can bar it like that, but now I don't have the root on the bottom anymore. I have my 5th on the bottom, which is a cool sound, and a lot of people do it on purpose, myself included. But this being a beginner lesson, we won't do that. And I'm also not playing my high string, because if I'm barring, now I'm not playing a note of my major chord. And I don't really want to do this. It's really difficult and, well, nobody does it. So that is how I would play chords with my A shape. And again, this is my B flat, B, C, remember there's no B sharp, C sharp or D flat, and same all the way up. Now, just like with the E shape, I can do the same with my A minor shape. I'm going to use my last 3 fingers for my A minor, slide it up, bar. Again, I'm only playing the inside 4 strings. Here's my B flat minor or A sharp minor, B minor, C minor, so on and so forth. So now that gives me the opportunity to not have to fly all around the guitar neck when I'm playing songs, because I can usually find a spot using all 4 of those shapes where they're going to be in close proximity to each other. So one last thing before we switch over to capos, you may have heard the term power chord and wondered what that was compared to a bar chord. A power chord is basically just the low notes of a bar chord. So you're just playing a piece of the bar chord instead of the whole thing. So for example, this is an A bar chord. This would be my A power chord. And you may see tab that you look up for a song you like that instead of saying A, it might just say A5. And you might be wondering what that means. That's another way of explaining a power chord. Because, and I don't want to get too technical for a beginner lesson, chords are made up of the root note, the 3rd, and the 5th of a scale. And what makes a chord major or minor is the 3rd. So if you're playing a power chord, you're only playing the root note and the 5th. So it doesn't really matter if the chord is supposed to be major or supposed to be minor. You're playing the power chords, and that note has to be implied, or if you're soloing, you want to be aware of it. But you're just playing roots and fifths. And those always sound better with a little bit of, gravy on them. So those are all bar chords, but they're just pieces of them. That's where you get the term power chord, or, something 5, if you see it in tab somewhere. But it's the same concept. You're still using the same notes on the neck that you would use to find the full chord. You're just playing a chunk of that chord. So that same concept of using your finger to bar across the whole guitar also applies to capos. So what the capo actually does is act as a bar for the entire fret that you're choosing to use. And so if you go on some sort of website and you want to find the chords to a song you want to sing, and it says capo 3rd fret, and then gives you all the standard chords, G, D. You don't really need to know the actual names of the chords you're playing. The only time that really matters is when you're playing with somebody else and they might not be using a capo. So they might be playing down here and you want to get a different sound and play up here. Well, now you have to know what chords you're actually playing. And it's the same concept as playing a bar chord. So if this is an E chord and I put a capo on the 1st fret and play my E chord shape, well, it's not an E anymore. Now it's an F, because I'm holding down, technically the capo is this 1st fret. That's an F chord. Same idea, I slide it up one more. F sharp, G flat chord. Now I've made it a minor. And same idea with my A shape. If this is an A, we'll start from scratch. And I capo it. Now I've played an A sharp or B flat, A sharp or B flat minor. Now the only difference between that and bar chords really is you have a couple chords, mainly D and F and D minor, where your root note is on your D string or your 4th string. So if I'm playing a D, my root note is the D string, logically. So if I were to capo it, let's just capo it on the 2nd fret. I play a D chord, now it's actually an E. Or if I were to play an F chord, I'd go 2 steps up from F is a G. Now I'm playing an actual G chord. They might be the shapes of chords you already know, but the actual chord itself has changed. And that matters if you're playing with somebody else who either isn't using a capo or is a bass player, or maybe you don't necessarily mind what chords you're playing, but a bass player isn't going to use a capo, so they're going to need to know what key you're actually in. So I hope that helps explain bar chords and using a capo a little bit better. I think the basic takeaway from a video like this would be to learn the fretboard, learn the names of the notes of where you are, and it'll certainly make your life easier when soloing, when playing with others, and when trying to navigate your way around songs that have a lot of chord changes. So as always, put on your hard hat and get to work, and we'll see you next time.